All right, Matt, I'll let you introduce François.
All right. Well, welcome to the. Wait, we have a new name for our group.
Yes.
I usually just call it the FileMaker Meetup, but we have a new name, which was your doing, Julie. I'll let you talk about that.
Yeah, Matt thought it would be good to change the name of the meetup group because it was attached to the Portland region. And now that it's mostly online, we thought about making it more general. And I brought up the idea of introducing the word bridge in the name, and Matt quite liked it because I've been told that there are many, many bridges in Portland. So for those who were like part of the group since it was born, it was not too much of a shock to see the name change, introducing the bridge concept. And the bridge was also reflecting the bridging our knowledge, bridging connection, knowing each other. So we liked it. And so we also introduced the name Claris, FileMaker, Claris Developer Bridge Network. Instead of FileMaker, since Claris is quite expanding in their product. And so the network for us to meet and continue to meet here online. So hopefully this group can expand to more people of more region. And we're sharing it in our connection here in Canada, and to make it to enlarge the geographic region now that we can meet virtually. So no one knows me, Matt, I realize, and I didn't present myself. I'm the communication.
Okay.
It's okay. So I'm
That's kind of funny.
Julie.
I would think that they would because I know you so well.
Sorry, Matt?
Well, since I know you, I just assumed other people do, but that's a common fallacy.
Yeah, I've been assisting Matt with sharing this group and trying to make it known elsewhere. And I've been attending a few meetups since the past 6 months, I think. So I'm a communication coordinator at Direct Impact Solutions, and we had the chance to know Matt with the acquisition of AppWorks recently. So, all right, so Matt, I'll let you.
So yeah, thank you again. It was your idea for the renaming of the group was so brilliant, and I really appreciate that. And because it does definitely reflect where we're going with this group. So one of the things I really liked about the merger of AppWorks with Direct Impact, or by Direct Impact, is access to the developers that Direct Impact has that specialize in areas that we were just too small to really become such experts at. And this meeting today is a really good example of really sharing some more deep data from within the company. So François is going to be talking about that. I don't want to really give too much preamble. I'd really rather have most of the time go directly to François. By the way, I'm not sharing video because I'm undergoing some strange medical issues with my face. I have partial paralysis of my left side of my face. So I won't share that because it scares children. Hopefully it'll clear in a couple of weeks. You can probably hear it affecting my voice as well because my lips are not working properly either. But it doesn't affect my brain or my fingers, so I'm still working away. So let's just go ahead and dive in. François, why don't you take over and maybe give a little bit intro on how you got to this topic, and then dive in with your presentation.
Yeah, perfect. So just so you know, this topic has been presented the first time at the .fmp. So I kind of practice that for the first time at that conference. It has changed a little bit, so I don't know if some of you has attended one at the .fmp. But anyway, there will be some new content and some live demo that I didn't do the first time. So let me begin by sharing my screen and start the presentation. Okay, so thank you for attending this presentation about OData and FileMaker technologies. But before getting into the art of the matter, I would like to introduce myself. So my name is François Dubé. I'm a technical lead for Direct Impact Solutions for 9 years now. I am a software developer by training, and I learned FileMaker during my first job in the field where I had to support and improve databases in FileMaker 3 and 6 formats. I am now a certified FileMaker developer, and you're talking about the FileMaker platform. A few words about, maybe I'll just hide this. I can do that. Hide the image of everyone. Okay, I'll check that out later. A few words about Direct Impact Solutions. The company was founded in Laval, Canada in 1996. Since then, we have open offices in Toronto and London, in Ontario, Lyon, Toulouse, and Paris in France, as well as New York and Portland in Oregon. We are the #1 Platinum Claris partner in Canada and one of the top 5 worldwide. We have more than 40 employees and collaborators in America and Europe, including 26 FileMaker certified developers. We are also a member of the Apple Consultants Network and the Microsoft Partner Network. So why this presentation on OData technology? The answer is simple. I was listening to Steve from Beeswax, excellent presentation on OData at the Dig FM, and his excellent articles on the Beeswax blog. And at the same time, I was starting an exploration project for a client where OData seemed like a potential solution. I realized that OData could open up some new doors, and I thought that it would be a good idea to share what I found. So this presentation, as its name indicates, will be about OData, but only partly. In fact, I will expose my exploration, which led me to choose and develop a solution using OData. I will also talk about other technologies gravitating around FileMaker and about aspects specific to the platform and the various client and server types. I don't pretend to be the expert on this subject. Everything is new to me, probably new to you too. I don't consider this subject to be technically advanced, but it's a subject like many others that still requires exploration and that requires being resourceful and creative. So I hope that the information in this presentation will be useful to you and that it will also benefit you. So on the agenda for today's presentation, I'm going to talk about the context of the project, then the exploration I had to do to find potential solutions. I will then talk about what is OData and how we can consume the service. I will give an overview on how I thought I would be able to replace an OBC setup with OData. I'm also going to talk about the final solution, and I will conclude with some live demos. The context of this project. So here's the background. A new client approached us to develop a custom CRM system hosted in the cloud that would be able to act as a data source for customer proposal in Excel format. A salesperson needs to be able to access an empty
Sorry, I muted everyone and then I muted François. Poor François. Give me a second. Can I unmute just you? I'm sorry, has Matt left? Matt?
Pardon? Yeah, I'm here.
Can you help and unmute François? I muted everyone and I didn't realize it muted François.
Let me see.
I can read lips, but not French, so I'm done.
Yeah, sorry, it's because there was some background noise, so I thought.
Actually, I can't unmute him.
No.
I think you're the presenter now, so you should be able to right click on him and unmute.
Okay, sorry. I'll just try then.
If you click on him, you can request him to unmute.
Yeah. Okay. Request. Oh, sorry. I just see a text message. Sorry, I'll try to.
Francois, you might not just leave and come back too. That just would just take a second.
Oh, I think you're unmuted now.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
there,
think I'm
there you
fine
go.
now.
I can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not
I just have
gonna touch
to mute
anything
the
anymore.
presentation.
So please, everyone, be careful and stay muted if you have background noise. So I'm gonna remute here myself, and I'm not gonna touch that again.
No problem.
Okay.
I was definitely not speaking in French, so if you want to read on my lips, no problem, I think. Okay, so let's start the presentation again. And just come back to the previous slide. Okay, so the Excel files will also be manipulated by other employees too, for example, print a purchase order or to create the invoice. So you will understand here that the customer had already made some technological choices, and getting rid of the Excel sheet by replacing it with a full-fledged FileMaker database was not an option, at least not for now, but maybe later. Moreover, he put these constraints on us. He wants to host a solution on the cloud, and he is very attracted by FileMaker Cloud, which seems to suit him in terms of number of users, general performance, and price. Also, with FileMaker Cloud, it is true that the maintenance of the server is reduced to a minimum, no security certificate to manage, no complicated update to do. The hardware adapts according to the number of users, etc. It is therefore a solution that seems to suit him well. Second, the number of users of the FileMaker database would be at most 5 users for now, mostly office staff. These users use Windows for the operating system. The number of salesperson is variable, and they all work remotely. They won't have direct access to the FileMaker CRM yet. The client already uses an Excel file for sales proposal, and it works for them. It's also important to mention that his employee know Excel very well and are efficient in using it for sales proposal, as well as for other type of documents. So as I said, recreating the proposal document using native FileMaker was not intended. In parallel to this project, the client was migrating its IT services like email, file storage, and sharing to Office 365. So he would like to use the Office 365 environment as much as possible. Finally, the customer has a very limited budget. So in light of these constraints, and the reason why this client has defined these constraints, we agree to work with them. In short, we have not reinvented anything here. The constraints imposed have squarely defined the high-level solution. The CRM itself that will be developed in FileMaker is simple, but the way we will get the data out from FileMaker to Excel is yet to be defined. And we already know that the final solution must be as simple as possible. Where do I begin my exploration? So that's all the question I'm asking to myself when I begin an exploration process. Because at this stage, there would be a risk to start a definitive project with a definitive solution. So we still have a couple variables we'll need to address to mitigate the possible risk. So I started this exploration by listing several different technological solutions. I chose the ones that seemed the easiest to realize and with the least amount of risk. Solution number one, data would be shared using ODBC technology. The client was already using ODBC to get data in his Excel file from another system. So the configuration on the salesperson end won't change much. But I must admit that this is not the most straightforward solution. An ODBC connection requires us to set up a couple of things, like a driver, a data source name on each computer that needs to access the data, a configuration in the FileMaker server, and a special port to open in the firewall for the ODBC to work. And this can be quite challenging to open custom ports for some client, mostly because of the security risk it brings. Although I know FileMaker Cloud and ODBC, it was for a project that didn't use FileMaker Cloud mostly for FileMaker Server for Windows or FileMaker Cloud V1. So if you don't already know, in FileMaker Cloud V1, even if there was no switch to activate or disable the ODBC JDBC sharing, there was a listener available through port 2399. It was then documented officially for FileMaker Cloud for AWS. But in this case, I just hope that it was officially supported in FileMaker Cloud V2. Solution number 2, OData. So like I said in my introduction, at the same time, I was reading about OData. So I knew that FileMaker Cloud supported the OData sharing, and I also knew that Microsoft Excel has some OData capabilities. But that's it. I never tried both technologies together. Solution number 3, we could use an intermediate database like MySQL that is compatible with both FileMaker Cloud and Excel and synchronize the data between those 3 parties. But I didn't like that much this solution as it involves 3 different apps and we will have to manage a bit more complex sync to synchronize the data. This was my last resort solution. There's also another solution that would be to create a microservice that would authenticate to the FileMaker data API and would pass the info between the data API and Excel. We already did this kind of setup, but it's not a simple setup and does require a web server in addition to the FileMaker server. Let's begin with the first solution and search for information that will confirm that everything will work. So I need to know if FileMaker Cloud has some ODBC capabilities. My first reflex was to activate the ODBC sharing on the FileMaker Cloud console because it's probably the quickest way to verify my hypothesis. There is actually a switch in the console in the connectors tab under ODBC JDBC, but that switch is not meant to enable ODBC sharing. It is meant to connect to remote database using ODBC, what we know as ESS. Anyway, after a look at FileMaker Cloud 2 Getting Started Guide, help documentation and technical specifications, there is really no mention of ODBC sharing capabilities. Although there might be a possibility that port 2399 is open but undocumented, like in FileMaker Cloud V1, I would not use that just because it doesn't look like it is supported by Claris. But I'm curious, so let's just try to connect to my test database where I already set up a user with proper setting. So I need to create a new DSN, configure the address of the database, username and password, and test failed. No, doesn't work, but that's okay. So I dropped that solution almost immediately. ODBC will not work. I will need to look for a replacement for ODBC, and OData is the next solution I will have a look at. What is OData? So I first need to know what is OData. As I said earlier, I watched the excellent DigFM presentation by Steve, so I knew a little bit about that. But for your own knowledge, I'll introduce OData for you. As per the definition on the official OData website, OData means Open Data Protocol and is a standard that defines a set of best practices for building and consuming RESTful APIs. It was initiated by Microsoft in 2007. That means that if you want to get the data from a FileMaker database, you can use standard syntax and methods. And to get data from another database type that support OData, Microsoft SharePoint, for example, you would use the same syntax and method, and the result would have the same data structured definition. Microsoft, SAP, SQL Server are examples of technologies that produce OData. Using OData, you can request resources, you can make queries, you can create new resources, relate resources together, invoke functions, and all that using the same syntax and method across all supported apps. OData in FileMaker does look similar in some ways to the data API. Both are consumed by calling an HTTP request. Both use JSON as the payload format. They can do about the same in a FileMaker database, like getting, deleting, modify and create data, and execute script as well. Although OData can do a little bit more. The payload format can also be in XML ATOM instead of JSON. But as a side note, and it's not relevant to my exploration project, I'm not sure I would use the XML format since there is a mention in the latest release note for OData version 4.01 that says that the ATOM format has very little adoption. It's going to be deprecated and hasn't been updated to reflect the new 4.01 features. By the way, FileMaker supported partially version 4.0 of OData. Some other things, OData can update the database schema, like create and delete a table, a field, or an index on a field. As another side note, someone told me that with SQL, you can also create and drop indexes. So it's not only for OData in FileMaker. OData is also transactional, which is a good thing. It does not require a layout. It uses table occurrences to get the context. And it can receive multiple requests in one call named batch that potentially optimize the communication between the two apps and could result in a performance improvement. OData is supported in FileMaker Cloud 2 and in FileMaker Server for Linux. Unfortunately, not on Windows yet. In some ways, OData could completely replace the need to have ODBC sharing. There is no need to install ODBC drivers, set up the data source name, and no need to open special ports and firewalls. OData will use the secured port 443 that simplifies the whole setup a lot. The risk of a malfunctioning component is very low, much like the data API or any other web service. And what's interesting is that in the official OData guide from Claris, it is stated that OData can replace ODBC and JDBC for most users. So how can we work with OData in FileMaker? So to know that, you'll have to refer to the FileMaker OData guide. There is no API documentation, to my knowledge, like with the data API, where you can reach the endpoint /FMI/data/API doc on your server to get that documentation. Here's an example of a request to get the list of all tables in a file. So you must define a host name, then the path to call the OData API, which is FMI/OData/v4 for the version of OData supported. And finally, the file name without the FMP12 extension. Some other examples: to get all records from a table, you simply append the table name at the end of the request URL. You can also append function keywords like filter and order by, but there's a couple more. In this case, so in this example, we are filtering by the city. So to get all contacts that live in the city of Laval. And here's an example of a response of a GET request on the contact table in JSON format. Let's now see quickly what we need to do in FileMaker to enable OData sharing. First, we need to activate the OData sharing in the FileMaker Cloud or Server Console. This is available under the Connectors tab. Then we need to set up our FileMaker file that will share its data to be able to use OData. We create a new user with a strong password and limited privileges. For this demo, I'm just going to select the data entry only privileges set. And finally, that privileges set needs to have the FM OData extended privilege. That's it, super simple. Okay, now what I want to do is to import data from a database hosted on FileMaker Cloud to an Excel file using OData instead of ODBC. What I'm showing you here is an example of the proposal document. The file contains 3 worksheets, one for the proposal form itself, the second for the list of customers, and the third worksheet is for the list of available products. I will need to set up a data connection, for example, to retrieve the list of customers. So let's do that. So I'll switch to the customers worksheet. I'll select the data tab. I'll click on the get data from other sources and from OData feed. I will then need to paste the link to my feed. The link looks like this, where test OData is the name of my database. This request will actually request the name of all the tables in my FileMaker file. Again, this is just for test. Okay, here I'm being proposed with a list of 5 ways to authenticate to my database. I didn't really pay attention to the authentication method available with data sharing in FileMaker. Here in Excel, I have the options to log in anonymously, to log in probably using the single sign-on of Windows. Basic is for basic authentication, web API, and organizational account. So I'll just suppose it's the basic authentication. So let's try that. Nope, doesn't work. So I guess my supposition wasn't right. It's not a good start. So when I've created my user that will log into the OData service, I just suppose the service was using the FileMaker local accounts. But to log into a FileMaker file hosted on FileMaker Cloud, you actually need to have a Claris ID. So maybe the OData sharing is also using the Claris ID. After a couple of research, I found many things. First, FMCloud use Claris ID to let users authenticate to OData, sort of. You have to go through a process of getting an access token. You can't simply use your Claris ID credentials. Claris ID authentication is in fact Amazon Cognito. So you will have to call the appropriate Amazon service, not a FileMaker service, to get that token. And it doesn't seem an easy task. I'll get back to this later. Moreover, that token is only good for 1 hour. So you will have to refresh after 1 hour. Finally, FileMaker server for Linux doesn't use Claris ID. It uses the local accounts. So by using those local accounts, it looks like the authentication method is the basic authentication type. So let's keep that in our pocket. I will go back to FileMaker, activate access to OData for my Claris ID. Now I need to get a token. Claris called it the FMID token, probably because the Claris ID was called FileMaker ID before. There is an official documentation about how to create that token. But after a look at it, it's clear I will need some kind of custom code to get that token. It's starting to be really complicated. There's probably a way that this custom code can run as a microservice or some kind of automated process, maybe VBA, Node.js, even Power Automate, a Claris Connect alternative from Microsoft. But for now, I just need to get that token to see if I can connect to FileMaker Cloud OData. After a quick research, I stumbled across an article from Wim at Soliant that explained everything and very well. But what kept my attention was this. So Wim says, be prepared. It is a complex multi-step process. Luckily, Wim and his team made a standalone Node.js web service that does exactly this. Get the access token required to log in to OData sharing using your Claris ID credentials. I will skip the step I did to make it running on my local machine. It's well explained in the article, but in short, I can start the web service inside Visual Code Studio for testing. And then with Postman, I can call the service, and here it is. We are looking for the ID token. By the way, if your Claris ID has the two-step verification enabled, it won't work. So I had to disable it in the Claris customer console. I will go back to Excel. I'll create the OData feed connection again. Now I need to provide my token, but how? Microsoft documentation about available authentication is not very clear. We might think that web API option might do the trick, but it will not. As per the documentation, the web API key or token would be extracted from a parameter in the URL itself. The token must be sent in the header of the request. In our case, the token is returned from a custom web service in JSON format in the body of the request. Some research indicates that with the use of Power Query, we might be able to do more with authentication. But what is Power Query? So Power Query, it's the extended editor to get external data, to filter, sort, transform, and create relationship in Excel between multiple queries. You can even do more advanced things using the advanced editor of Power Query. In that case, the steps to transform the data has to be written in the Power Query language, also known as the M language. Oh, so something new to learn. As you can see in the screenshot, the M language of Power Query let me include a header parameter, the ID token, or FMID token. I'm gonna save and try running the query. Yeah, it's working. So the connection is established. We can extract the data and do what we want. But is this the right solution? I must admit that I lost the focus. I was too much stubborn in getting the data to import, but that solution will not work. First of all, in 1 hour, the token will need to be refreshed, but there is no place to refresh it from the user side. There is no user-friendly screen to accept a token. The user would have to open Power Query and the advanced editor to do that. So that's not an option. Second, getting the token and getting the data are two separate processes. From a user perspective, it's really not the best solution. So the ideal solution would be to get the token and the data in one process. But Excel doesn't have an option to call a custom web service to get a token and apply that token to an OData feed. I thought of several solutions to simplify the process, but the reason to go with FileMaker Cloud and OData to refresh Excel data was precisely to simplify the process and was the closest alternative to ODBC. So as a developer, we look for and design solutions to solve problems. But every problem has constraints and roadblocks. Some constraints and roadblocks can be bypassed or overcome, some cannot. With an unlimited budget, maybe I would have been able to bypass all the roadblocks and make the process easy or even completely automated for a user. But I didn't have that budget, nor did I have an unlimited time frame to do that. Anyway, I have to mourn this solution. I will continue my exploration, but I feel like I'm near the end of available and viable solutions that respect the client's constraint. There is still the solution number 3 that involves an intermediate SQL database between FileMaker Cloud and Excel. However, like I said, I don't quite like that solution. I also don't want to go with the microservice and data API route, at least not for now, as it will require more budget and does bring extra components. So before trying these ones, I'll explore another solution that doesn't respect one of the client's constraints though. Remember I said that FileMaker server for Linux support basic authentication? That would be nice if everything could work straight out of the box. Let's try that again with the same database, but now hosted on a FileMaker server for Linux. I'll select the basic authentication in Excel, enter the username and password of the FileMaker account I've created earlier, and boom, Excel is now showing me the list of available tables. I can select the contacts table and click the load button. Voila, working great straight out of the box. That is the solution I've proposed to my client. We had to convince him that even though FileMaker Server Linux would require a little more attention than FileMaker Cloud, it is still a reliable setup, and that will give him more flexibility for his project and for the future. So my exploration project is done. The client chose that solution. To summarize, FileMaker in Excel with OData works on Windows version of Excel to create the connection and refresh the data, and partially on Excel Online. It does not work at all on the Mac version of Excel. It works with FileMaker Server for Linux with basic authentication using a local FileMaker account, but it does not work with FileMaker Cloud because of the authentication type, which is Claris ID or Amazon Cognito. But hey, let's continue to explore FileMaker Server for Linux and OData sharing using basic authentication seem to be a nice combination. We can do a lot of things. So let's see other applications that can consume an OData share. So I'll now switch to some live demo. Okay, so let me start with this one. I'll hide that screen. Okay, I'll bring Microsoft Power BI. Okay, it's there. It's running really slow because it's running on my VMware Windows, but let's just try to use that. Okay, so with Power BI, you can import an OData here. So I'll begin by getting data from another source. So I click on that button. Wow, it is very slow. Okay, I will search for OData. Okay, so OData feed. I'll click connect. So since I already made a connection in the past, it doesn't ask me for the authentication method and username and password, but I still have to provide the URL to my feed. So I'll just paste the URL here, click OK. Okay, so we can already see that we can load some records. I will load the contact table.
Para servir la luz.
Vale.
Apareció el adaptador.
¿Sí?
Y un adaptador así como un transferir.
Ya.
Perfecto.
Muy bien, Martín.
We will wait until it's done loading the data. It will take a couple minutes. So as you can see, I don't have a full-fledged demo for this, as I only wanted to show you that Power BI can access the data from FileMaker server on Linux using the OData API. So the same way we are doing it with Excel. Let's just wait some more time. Okay. It's working slowly, but it's working. Okay, I have my contact table here. I have all my fields. I can probably just select the city field. So Power BI will propose me a map because the city field will contain all the city that the contacts lived in. Let's do it bigger, enlarge that a little bit. Okay. Yep. So that was just to show you that Power BI can import the data from FileMaker using OData. And we can do the same with Tableau. I'll bring Tableau here. Basically, it's the same step. So I'll click on connect to a server, OData here. So that's the URL. I will need to provide the username and password. As for the authentication, you can see that there is only two choices. So no authentication, which is the anonymous authentication, and username and password, which is the basic authentication. So even using Tableau, it will not be possible to connect to an OData source that use the OAuth authentication or any other custom authentication method. So I'll select username and password for basic authentication. I will input the password. Let's see. Okay, sign in. Okay, so to load the data, we have to drag the tables we want. I'll drag the contact table. You can already see all the fields. Now I need to create a new sheet to visualize the data. I'll create the same example with a map of all the cities. So I'll select city and I'll select the map. So automatically the map is created. I can even load the count of contacts, and it will automatically also calculate the number of contacts that live in those cities. So 2 contacts in St. Catharines, 2 contacts in Mississauga, Barrie, and so on. Last demo I want to show you is Power BI, not Power BI, sorry, Power Automate. I'll just bring the window. It's hidden here. Okay. Okay. What is Power Automate? Like I said earlier, it's an alternative to Claris Connect, Zapier, Integromat, and many more. With Power Automate, you can create a flow using multiple connectors to automate a process and exchange information between different apps and web services. Outlook, Excel, Google Calendar, Dropbox, OneDrive, Slack, WebEx, WordPress are all examples of apps you can connect together to create a flow. However, there is no built-in connectors for FileMaker, but we can create a custom connector that will use the OData sharing with basic auth from a FileMaker server Linux instance. So let me show you what the custom connector looks like. I'll go to data custom connector here. I'll click edit. Okay, so in the general tab, I had to input the URL, the base URL to access the OData share or feed. In the security tab, we need to select the authentication type and username and password. And in the definition tab, I had to define the different actions I would like to automate in FileMaker. For example, the creation of a record in the quiz table, but we can also get the data or create data in other tables. In fact, we can do everything what OData allows us. I'll select a new quiz. So for new quiz, I had to create a new request, a new post request. And the body of the request will all be placeholder or the fields we want to fill in with information from the other source, like answer question 1, answer question 2, 3, email, first name, last name, submission type, time, sorry. In Power Automate, we also have access to a Swagger editor. So this is an advanced editor when you can configure things more deeply, and where you can see all your configured action and resources. Then I've created a flow. I'll switch to another tab. So I already create a flow. So this flow is super simple. It will trigger as soon as someone, a student, for example, has submitted a new response for a quiz or a survey on Microsoft Forms. It will then for each response or answers, extract all the answers, pass those information to my custom connector that will create a record in the FileMaker database using OData. So my custom connector is here, new quiz. So here I'm telling the custom connector to get information, for example, for the first name from the answer of the quiz on Microsoft Forms. Same thing for last name, email, answer questions 1, answer question 2, and so on. I also send an email notification or even a notification in an app like Microsoft Teams to tell a specific person that a student submitted a new response for the quiz. So let's try the flow by answering the quiz. I will also I'll switch to the quiz here. I'll bring my FileMaker app here. That's the contact table, but I also have the quiz table here with 0 record. Okay, so let's show that quiz. Since which version did OData appear in FileMaker? FileMaker 19. In which year was the OData created? So 2007. True or false? Does OData allow us to create new tables? Yes. I'll enter my name, François Dubé, and my email address. And submit. So under a second, I now see my record created in the FileMaker database. And I also got a notification. However, I cannot show you the notification because it's on my other screen. And for whatever reason, I cannot bring the notification to the screen that I share. I can probably show you the email that I got. Yep, so I received that email. This is an email I configured. So with the person that filled the quiz, the submit time, and the ID in FileMaker to retrieve the answers. I could probably have been able to create a link to open the FileMaker database automatically. So that's it for the live demos. Let's get back to my presentation and we will conclude on that. So to conclude, sharing your data using OData from FileMaker with off-the-shelf apps is possible, but not so easy because of some constraints. And the problem is not the OData itself, but rather the authentication and the support of the technology in those apps. Basic authentication seems to be the one that is most adopted. Third-party authentications providers like Amazon Cognito are simply not supported by these off-the-shelf consumers. This gives us one more reason to use FileMaker Server Linux, and we'll hope that OData will come to Windows and Mac version of FileMaker Server as well. So can we replace ODBC with OData? Yes. And even though it is still a bit limited, I suggest to use OData over ODBC if the constraint associated with its use is not a roadblock for the project. That's it. I hope that you learned something today. And if anyone has questions, it's the time to do so.
I wonder how I can unmute everyone now. Can anyone unmute itself? Yes, it seems to be working. Okay, great. So
I have.
Go ahead, Al.
Okay, I had a question a bit unrelated to OData, but I was wondering about Microsoft Flow. Do you know if there's some more functionalities that you could get from using that? Like, is there an integration with test cases in Azure DevOps? Okay,
there's a lot you can do with it. So you're talking about Microsoft Flow, but I guess you mean Microsoft Power Automate, which is the right name for the product. And in Power Automate, you can create Flow. Yes, there are a lot of connectors. Much more than Claris Connect, by the way. Maybe I can bring back my browser here, the list of the different connectors. So there's connectors for pretty much everything. And if it's not there, you can also create a custom connector. But since Azure is a Microsoft product, I don't see why. I'm pretty sure that there is an Azure DevOps connector. Let's see that. Yeah, Azure DevOps.
Oh, cool. All right, I'll look into it.
You can pretty much do everything.
Yeah. It was the first time I've heard about that, so that's why I was wondering. Okay. Thanks.
François, thanks for that overview. Obviously, a lot of digging in to do. I'm a FileMaker 1.x host right now, moving to Linux. So I'm encouraged by this. But can you just clarify for me, with ODBC, the data updates kind of automatically in semi-real time, but OData is transactional, right? It's like the data API. So we do have to understand that the data only moves when we ask for it to move.
Okay, so when you're talking about ODBC that is refreshing automatically, are you talking about the ESS technology? So when you're connecting to a ODBC, okay, so that's a different thing. So the OData is to share data with the outside. So I was not talking about the ODBC capabilities of FileMaker
Okay.
to view the ODBC data or to access or to display that data in your FileMaker app. So if you want more information on the transactional things, I'm pretty sure that during that DigFM presentation by Steve, there was some information on that. For what I know about that, I don't know if it's only related to the batch functionality of the OData, but since you can create or you can send multiple requests in one batch, I guess that if the first request failed, all the other ones will also fail. So, and if like the second failed, probably the first one will be rolled back, just to be sure that your data will be rolled back to what it was before you send those requests. So I think that's the way it's working, but I'm not 100% sure about that.
Thank you.
No problem. Other people have questions? No? Okay, so so this meetup has been recorded, so I'm pretty sure it will be live someday. I don't know when, but shortly. So yeah, don't hesitate to
Yes,
get
it's
back to it if you have any questions. Okay.
I'll see with Matt where it's going to be provided the link to the meeting. I think it's most often put in the meetup group, Matt.
Run that by me again.
The link to the recording. Do you usually post it in the group?
Yeah, actually, what I'll probably will do is upload it to YouTube, and I will post it to the meetup page, meetup.com.
Great.
So yeah, you have the file.
Yeah,
Have you started the thing already?
Yeah, I'll post a link for you, but
Great.
yeah.
And François, thanks also. I've been waiting to get, to say thank you for this great presentation.
No problem. It's been a pleasure. And I hope I will do more of these.
Good. I love the tech nerd out. And I really like the thought process of showing like the multiple things you tried and thought about different ways to solve this problem,
Yeah, and even if I listed those solutions, we know as a FileMaker developer, there's probably many more solutions I just didn't thought about. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a big part of the job, right? Is to rule out all the really bad ones. But you have to think about a lot of them.
Yeah.
You never know when one of the weird ones is going to be the right way.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. So if no one has any other questions, we'll end the meetup.
All right.
Now.
So I'll stop the recording. And Matt, I wish you to get better very, very soon.
Thank you.
Hopefully the weekend
well.
you can rest and be your old self on Monday.
My old young self.
Yes, your old young self.
It might take a while. They're telling me it could be weeks even, but we'll see.
Well, don't stress. The most important is to rest. And I wish you to get better very, very soon.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you everyone for joining. See you next month.
Have a good day.
Yep, thank you. Thanks, François.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
No problem. Bye-bye.